Two formation, road change now, we go racing for the first time this season, 3 hours of GT action, it's go!
It's very tight as they come down, group of cars coming in, this has all got trouble written all over it, this is G3 cars.
Drop downhill, they head towards the Aqua Minerale, Imola of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line, yes oh, he did, there we go!
Hello everyone and a very good evening for the 4th round of the ACC AOR Apex Online Racing Season XI, that's 11 if you're Roman and fluent in Latin. We are today at Indianapolis at the Indy 500 track in the road configuration, which is actually impossible to find a proper track map for, because the track is just so darn new. So, today we will be able to explore this track together, because I have to admit I'm not really that knowledgeable in this track. My name is Tretta, of course, today standing in for John and Tim, who both said they can't make it today, so you'll have to do with me for today's race. We will now have a 50-minute qualifying session, first few laps being set at the moment as we are speaking, and afterwards we will start into a 90-minute race. So 90 minutes today. We will be driving in somewhat dark conditions, but at least dry conditions. At least that's very likely. Very low chance of rain today. And let's see how this race plays out. So at the moment on board with Lukas Rode, who is the first one to set a flying lap. Now coming into the second to last turn, which no doubt has some sort of number or name to be described, and I'm sure I'll at some point in the next 2 hours we can spend together find out what that number is. It was a 1:36, the number that is important here, because that's the first lap time we are seeing now from Lucas. But that's only P2 for the moment being. A 1:35 from John Watson is the provisional pole time. That's Jordan Watson actually, I'm sorry. That time still standing. Of course, still a lot of drivers to actually set the lap time. 27 drivers on the grid so far. Maybe we will see some more drivers joining the race today. They still have 10 minutes to join this qualifying session, but let's just assume it's going to be 27. Jordan still with the fastest lap time. Just as an insight from the practice session, we had a few lap times, most of them in the 1:35s, so across the grid, very much 1:35s, the lap times today. Just trying to get some sense of what is happening. Sorry if this is starting off a bit rocky. So, the driver that most of us will be watching, that is Jamie Nuttall. Currently P11, he is leading the championship for the time being. Won the first race in Spa. Then came second in Watkins Glen in the second round, and third in Paul Ricard last week. So by that trajectory, he should be finishing just off the podium today, but I'm sure he will want to actually finish somewhat better and maybe try to get back on the top stat. But for the moment being, only P9 on qualifying. Well, I say only, still a very good time. Yes, Samian pointing out in the chat. Very close lap times, so over the practice session we saw a spread of just under 1.5 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, over the whole field. At the moment that's the 1.5 seconds. The last driver to set lap time at the moment, that's Jan Kleems with a 1:37.1. That's 1.5 seconds behind the provisional pole setter, which is still Jordan Watson. Jordan Watson, currently 4th in the championship, managed to get second place in Spa in the first round, but sadly didn't finish in Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago, and a 6th place in Paul Ricard. So definitely can't be counted out. A strong driver with just one unlucky finish. And he will be very desperate to make up places in this race, maybe get a very good position, try to get back into the fight for the championship lead. Improved on his lap time as well in this lap, so that's now a 1:35.1, 4/10 behind P2 for the time being, so that's actually a very commanding lead over the early stages of this qualifying session. P2, that's Tim Pietschmann at the moment, setting the exact same lap time as Alessio Melis, who just crossed the start-finish line. So that's a 1:35.552 for both of them in P2 and P3. Jamie Nuttall now on another flying lap. Currently in P5, so managed to improve somewhat on his lap time. A lot of the front-running drivers at the moment in the pit lane, so making some last setup changes, going out again with a fresh set of tires. Jordan Watson again now on his out lap. We will just stay on with Jamie Nuttall for the time being, and let's see if he can improve on his lap time. At the moment around 1/10 up, still has a few corners to go. Now coming into the last chicane before the started finish line, and then it's basically full throttle, but yeah, aborts his lap just coming out of last turn, so small mistakes somewhere. Let's take a look who is starting a flying lap. That should be the number 7 car of Yuko Termonen, who couldn't set a lap time so far. Let's just use that opportunity and watch a lap around this track. So out of turn 2, coming right into the next right-hander, turn 3, into turn 4, basically 90-degree corner. Bit of a wide line, didn't quite hit the apex here. Into the 180-degree corner. And now onto the back straight. Exit was a bit wide, I'm not quite sure what the track limits are around here, but that lap time is still valid, so I guess that was a completely valid line as well. Left-hander at the end of the back straight. Now into the chicane. Termon still P25 for the time being, but very close to P24, and by default on this in this tier, close to most of the drivers. And now on to the start-finish line. this very long right-hander, but sadly isn't actually using some of the Indy 500 banking. Temon can't improve on this lap time, so that's still a 1:36.8, but he still has a few tries to go. At the front we still have Watson leading, as we also get the info in chat that Jamie Nuttall's spotter, which is his dad, still has a few aces up his sleeve. So yeah, there's still hope of the Honda apparently struggling a bit on this track. Car that is leading the qualifying session for the time being is the Ferrari of Watson. Now coming onto the start finish, starting a new lap. Very heavy traffic, a lot of drivers starting their lap right now. Also apologize for any long silences. I have joined basically all of Europe in being sick at the moment, so that might just be me having to cough a bit. So let's see, Seaman, yeah, talking about McCole. At the moment, P8 in the positions, 7 points behind Koroshavin in P7. Just had to abort his lap time. So made a mistake somewhere, currently back in the pits. But P5 for the time being, with Koroshavin being P9. So that's certainly an interesting duel. McCoy now also coming back out again for what should be the last lap he is able to set. John Watson very much, I think, being obstructed by the car in front. Yeah, lost around 2/10 there coming into the last corner. Maybe at least the slipstream will give some of that back. Still manages to improve the lap time by around 1/10, so that's a 1:35.0. We are almost into the 1:34s. Tim Peachman currently P2. But the next front runner who comes in is actually Niklas Hurt, who just set lap time, P2 for the time, with 1:35.4. And now Merveld coming in, didn't improve on his lap time. Peachman improved slightly, but Alessio Mellis improved by quite a margin. Now put himself into P2, 1:35.3. As we also see in this qualifying session, rain forecasted. Let's see if that will translate into the race. That would certainly make things interesting. Or rather more interesting. It's gonna be an interesting race regardless. Yeah, also track still green. So drivers not really able to drive to their full potential for the time being. Yeah, track might still be a bit slidey, as we should see most drivers now starting or currently driving their last lap. Tim Peachman around about to finish another lap time, currently 2/10 in front, so might be looking at P3, potentially P2, as we again see the same lap time twice, this time between Alessio Mellis and Jamie Nuttall, but Alessio Mellis couldn't really let that happen, so improved on his lap time, just as I was saying. Still P2 with a 1:35.2. Jamie Nuttall into P3 with a 1:35.3. So the championship leader looking towards the front row, as qualifying session has finished, but still a lot of drivers on a fast lap, including the top 5 of the current provisional grid. Dominic Gölz, about to finish another lap time, is looking at a slight improvement. So Vince van Merwelt in P6, or rather in P7 now, after getting overtaken by Dominic Gölz, who did in fact improve. In the top 3, nothing changing so far, but the top 6 changing now that Kieran Patterson put himself into P6. And let's see if there's anybody else on a fast lap time. It doesn't look like anyone is. So, with neither Watson nor Mellis really looking at any improvements in this lap, but never say never, looks like our pole position sitter is Jordan Watson. And indeed, he is, as Mellis finishes the lap. So, Jordan Watson, P1 on pole position, next to Alessio Mellis in P2, Jamie Nuttall in P3, and just after a quick wait time, we will go over the rest of the grid and then go into the race start.
Two formation. Well, change now. We go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action is go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill, then head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
And welcome back. Still 2 minutes to race that, but as Stan has already pointed out, things actually took a turn for the even more interesting, and we will be expecting rain in 10 minutes and already starting on a wet track. So, 90 minutes this race, and it's looking like it's gonna be at least a wet start, and with rain getting heavier towards the 30-minute mark, I'm almost certain this will be a full wet race. So this is going to be a good one. Let's see what the drivers will, how the drivers will be able to cope with this. Also notable, the race starts on a wet track, but without any more rain coming. So this will make conditions very tricky until it starts raining again in around 10 minutes, with the track drying off at least somewhat. But we will have to wait and see if it's even enough to put the track into damp conditions, let alone anything that can be considered dry conditions. So 1 minute still to go. As already mentioned, our pole sitter today, Jordan Watson, next to Alessio Mellis, 1-2 of the Ferrari cars. Behind them, Jamie Nuttall in the Honda, 2 McLarens of Tim Pietschmann and Niklas Hurt behind that. Kieran Patterson in another Ferrari in P6. Dominic Goetz P7 in the Aston Martin. Vince van Merveld in an Audi. A BMW of Christoph Maskowski in P9. Andras Kuderman in P10 in another Honda, and yet again a BMW of Jack Young in P11. P12 Morgan McCall in the first Mercedes on the grid. Florian Dürkop in the second Mercedes off the grid in P13. Christos Podens in P14 in a Honda. 2 McLarens of Lukas Rode and Thomas Jack, P15 and 16. Dominique Koroshavin in another Aston Martin, P17. Behind him, Joshua Allen in a McLaren, P18. Matt York, Aston Martin, P19. Robin Moe, P20. Mr. Jones in P21. The sole Lexus on the grid of Jukka Termonen in P22. The number 88 car of Schmeshmek Ostruch, that's definitely not correct. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. In another Aston Martin P23. Another Audi of Daniel Giacomelli, P24. Then we have Vency Rajchinov and Jan Klimes in the 2 Porsches of the grid. Both of them very far towards the back end of the grid, so that's interesting to know. The Porsche seemingly not on their best trick today. And in last place in P27, Ole Pitschik in Aston Martin. Simeon mentioning, yeah, it will be hilarious. I think that's a good way to put it. Track already down to damn conditions. So as I was saying before, that barrage of wrongly pronounced names, conditions, especially towards the start of the race, will be a very big factor and will be very interesting to see, as the track will be changing very quickly and then changing back again once the rain sets in, whenever that will be. Quite strong wind, so we might expect the changeover to come more quickly. All drivers have to do 1 mandatory pit stop. They don't have to refuel, they don't have to change tires, so that's different to the 60-minute races, which require a tire change. 90-minute races, they don't. But yeah, given the conditions, we will see if any drivers opt to not change their tires. Might be that it's simply mandatory due to the track drying out, but as the weather just changed again, rain getting even heavier in 30 minutes time. The grid makes their way towards the start line. Just a quick reminder of the championship positions. Jamie Nuttall currently leading the championship by 76 points, so if nothing major happens, should keep that lead in this race, followed by Christoph Markowski in P2 and Lukas Rode in P3, currently the top 3 of the championship. Markowski and Rode actually further back this race, especially Rode in P15. Jordan Watson, our pole sitter, in P4 after having to DNF in Watkins Glen and looking to make up a few places. But focus now on the race start. Slowly creeping their way towards the start line. And the race is on. So Jordan Watson getting away quite well, but Mellis can stick with him just for the time being. Jamie Nuttall tries to have a look inside in the inside and has some contact there. There's a spin as Antio Mellis makes his way past Pietschmann. Huge pile up. So that was caused by a contact between Pietschmann and Nuttall. Jordan Watson could keep his lead. Antio Mellis still behind. We'll just quickly try to see what happened at the start there. Couldn't, yeah, that was not quite far back enough, but we see a huge pile up, some cars off. So that's definitely Pietschmann. He's now in second to last place. Jordan Watson still the leader for now. Mellis and Nuttall, that's still the top 3. Niklas Hurt making his way up to P4, and also Markowski already up to P6, making 2 places in the early stages of the race. So did basically everyone behind him with the start at the crash that took out Tim Piechman and also Vince van Merwelt, who I have read is apparently a fan favorite, having to now fight his way back up the ranks, now even getting overtaken by Piechman, who has a long way to go to make up his positions. And there's another car taking the long way around. That was Christes Podens. Not quite sure what happened there. And another spin. So very much struggling with the wet conditions. At the front, Alessio Mellis still P2, and Jordan Watson not really struggling with the positions, because he is already 1.2 seconds in front of the rest of the grid. So wet conditions already catching out quite a few drivers apparently. So we see Moskowski 3/10 behind Goetz. So charging up the field quite a lot, and so is also Lukas Rode, who started in P15, already up in P10. So Rode and Markowski, as I just mentioned, with the task of trying to chase down Nuttall in the championship lead. So we see Andras Kuderman losing quite a few positions there. Making a few places up again, so still a lot of moves in this early stage of the race, as I'm trying to also find a camera position that actually lets us see what is happening. Rain starting again, so damp conditions won't last very long. There's some contact between Koroshavin and Kuderman, and also again between Dürkop and Kuderman. That made Kuderman lose 2 positions in the span of 2 corners. Dominik Goetz very close to Niklas Hurt at the moment. We're coming towards into the last chicane. But we also saw Nuttall taking the very, very wide line, which now puts him under pressure from Hurt. Coming onto the start-finish track, Hurt does have the slipstream. Goes towards the outside for turn 1. Nuttall in the inside, side by side, coming into turn 2. And Hurt now with the inside line into turn 2 manages to take P3 from Jamie Nuttall. And these few scraps, very good news for Mellis and Watson, who are already 2 seconds in front of the rest of the pack. Daniel Goetz now also pressuring Nuttall. Coming up to the back straight. Let's see if Goetz can use the slipstream towards a move into the next 90-degree corner. Almost front drafting, now going to the outside. Doesn't quite have enough speed, but can he outbrake Nuttall? And he can. Goetz goes past, Nuttall fights back, going for the switchback. Now the outside line, now the inside line. It looks like he can manage to hold onto the position, but can Markowski utilize this? And it looks like he can. Just slots in behind Goetz, so Nuttall keeps the position for the moment. So Jamie Nuttall now can take a breather, this time not under pressure, coming onto the start-finish. But Daniel Goetz now under pressure, as we also see some moves towards the back. Not quite sure who that is. That should be Florian Dürkop. Yeah, it was. And also Matt York managing to make up a position on Patterson. So it goes up into P14. Morgan McCole, who we Saw qualifying in P12, already up into P7. Now taking a look at the back of Makowski. Towards the end of the backstraight, doesn't quite have the speed to try to convert that into an overtake. Still has to hang back for now. The top four now very much separating themselves from the field. Watson already 2.5 seconds in front, in front of Alessio Mellis, who's again 2 seconds in front of Niklas Hurt, who again 2 seconds in front of Jamie Nuttall. But the fight for P6 very much on, or rather P5. That's between Daniel Goetz, Makowski and McCall. So Dominic Goetz now under threat from Makowski. Covers the inside line. And yeah, that's enough for the time being. Manages to stay ahead for now. With McCall pretty much taking a look at it from the outside. Also now finds himself under pressure from Jack Young. Oh, but I think there was a small mistake from Makowski. Because he lost a lot of time there, and McCall almost pulling side by side. Not quite sure what happened there. Must have missed that? Yeah, the Ferraris still definitely dominant here. 1-2 at the moment. See Morgan McCall now trying it round the outside on the banking, coming out of the banking. Front Dominic Goetz going a bit wide, so just ever so slightly. Now onto the start finish. Morgan McCall very close. Also very close brush with the wall, taking every bit of track, pulling outside, and that enabled Jack Young to actually use the slipstream from Makowski and take P6. P7 from McCall. So very sneaky move there. It might just be that he actually did touch the wall, lost some of the straight line speed because of that. But to me it actually looked like Jack Young just used the slipstream where McCall didn't. Very curious move. McCall now also even under threat from Lukas Rode in P9. Jack Young still looking at the charge. So he also already making up for positions. A lot of the front runners with some gains in the first few laps of the race. So just as a quick weather update, in around 30 minutes rain should be becoming a bit less. So a bit uncharacteristically, especially towards the front of the grid, we see pretty big gaps forming already after just 10 minutes of the race. I'm guessing the rain just a very big equalizer here, so drivers really able to show their skill, show their wet weather driving skill. Yeah, it's silly as it sounds. It is different to driving in the dry. Takes a lot more concentration, takes a lot more effort to keep it on track. So some drivers might just opt to be a bit more careful and rather take 1 second less per lap than pinning it somewhere around the track, especially with walls all around in huge parts of the track, or was it feeling like a street circuit? Making no mistake is even more crucial here than, say, in Paul Ricard last week, where you have loads of runoff to play with. So we are still looking at Jack Young being now again pressured by McCall, who is trying to retake that position. A bit behind them, Florian Dürkop trying to break into the top 10, but in turn also under pressure from Robin Moe behind him. Out of the banking, McCall 1/10 behind, again very close, seems to have a bit more control in that part of the track. We saw him again also being very close last lap around, but now loses some of the time coming onto the start-finish line, the start-finish straight. And yeah, that will prevent him from trying to make that an actual overtake. Jack Young thinks about having a look at Makowski, but that wasn't really going to happen. Is at the moment the battle, the closest battle at the front of the grid. We have some drivers still fighting, especially towards the back end of the grid, including, I'm still told, fan favorite Vince van Merwelt, as we also saw Mr. Jones just yeeting himself into the wall there. I think he just went straight on. Just got onto the grass, and that will stop you from having any braking whatsoever. But also now leaving the server, so may just also be a technical issue. We're down to 25 drivers. First DNF already after 15 minutes. It's a shame. Don't want to see that. Morgan McCole now side by side with Young, but has to brake there. Young just deciding to take that inside line. And yeah, after that, still no chance to try anything into turn 1. So McCole still desperately trying to make up that P7 he lost 2 laps earlier. Przemek Ustrok. I tried. In P15, trying to make that P14. In front of him, we see Patterson, who has a 4.5 second gap to P13 in front, so Ustrok might feel that he has a lot more pace to use. So you see another car in the pits. That is Radchinov, seemingly having an issue. So dropping back, and also now off the server. So that's the second disconnect of the day. Morgan McCole again side by side with Young. Don't think we will see these two getting apart from each other anytime soon. McCole now very close again. Coming towards the banking, even though the actual banking isn't used. I think there was again a slight touch of the wall. But he is very close now coming onto the start-finish line. I don't think he has been this close for the past 2 laps. So let's take a look if he can try anything into turn 1. 2/10 behind Young now. Coming towards the braking zone. Doesn't even take a look to towards the outside. just decides to hang back for now. P13 also chasing after Cuterman in P14, and we also have a huge pack here from P15 down to P20, so that's 5 cars all within 1 second of each other. Currently being led by Kieran Patterson, who is forming somewhat of a train here. And just, yeah, hanging on to P14, not really catching up to P13, but holding up a lot of people behind him. Always trying to always keep an eye on the timing on that battle between Young and McCall. It's still a very close one, as we have another collision towards the back. That was Giacomelli. Let's take a look what happened here. Just lost the car on exit. And oh, yeah, didn't really look while rejoining, getting collected by Cleams. It might actually have been Timon, one of the two. Yeah, just unsafe rejoin. And probably a lot of damage in return. Jack Young now managing to catch up to Makowski in front. So this battle looking to be a freeway battle again. Young actually now closer to P6 than McCall behind him to P7. Now onto the back straight. But I think that's still a bit too much distance. Smakowski 2 seconds behind Girls in P5. Still somewhat staying in the race, but not really gaining any time either. Lap times towards the front of the grid, 1:42s, 1:34s. We also have a few more battles starting to slowly develop at the further front of the grid. For instance, Niklas Hurt now 4/10 behind Alessio Mellis in P2. So again, saw Mellis, yeah, very far to the outside. And behind him, I think that was Goetz who actually hit the wall. Niklas Hurt just having a very small think about it. But someone who isn't really having a think, but actually is having a go, is Jack Young. But Makowski has the inside line in turn 1 and turn 2, so that enables him to defend the position for now. And now again McCall very close. Niklas Hurt, just to give you an update, falling back a bit. Simon McCall has a little in the inside in this 180-degree corner, but hangs back for now. Now onto the back straight. Doesn't really have the entry speed, I think, because of that maneuver. And yeah, still has to hang back. These three still very closely following each other. And so is Dominique Koroshavin, who is following Lukas Rode in front and is being followed by Dürkop. Koroshavin trying the inside line here. Still on the inside at the non-banking banking corner. But has to stick back for now. Lukas Rode keeps the position. Yeah, Simeon pointed out, Jordan Watson already 5 seconds in front, So very commanding lead. In front, Jack Young again, playing the same song again into turn 1, but Makowski again with the inside line in turn 1 and turn 2. That's a very good defensive position he is taking, and that doesn't really give Jack Young any possibility to get past, but it does give McCall a possibility to try it maybe, but no, it's yeah, it's the same story every lap. No inch between those three. And again coming onto the back straight. Past the 20-minute mark last lap. Niklas Hürth slowly inching closer to Malice again. But yeah, gap stays at around 1 second. And this gap, which we have been watching for most of the race, but it is a very exciting fight. Morgan McCall is still 2 tenths behind Jack Young. Jack Young now a bit further behind Makowski onto the start-finish. So at least somewhat of a change from last race. The rain is expected to get a bit less in 10 minutes. But another factor now setting in, of course, which is the dark. So we're slowly coming towards the night time, which will not really make things easier. Of course, this track is pretty well lit. Not just in a sense that it's cool, but also in a sense that it has a lot of floodlights. I hate myself for that joke. Still, braking points will be harder to spot in the dusk, and especially later on in the dark. Ooh, very risky slide for Goroshavin there. Small burst of Eurobeat playing in this cockpit. Yeah, Tim pointing out, and we can already see it towards the banking. Actually, not even that well lit. Gets pretty dark there. We just saw that on camera. Most of the on-track battles now slowly starting to get settled, excluding this one here for one. Jack Young again having a small look, but yeah, that wasn't really going to happen. But it might now happen, coming out of turn 2. That's as close as they have ever been. And again, McCall having just a small sneak peek in the inside. Yeah, oh, now gets the inside line in a 180-degree corner. And there's contact between the two. And that now has Morgan McCall getting the upper hand. So just drifting a bit too far to the outside. Slams into Jack Young, who can still keep up, but loses that position. So at last we see some changes here, and we saw another change in front as we saw Niklas Hürth getting past Melis. So let's just see if we can maybe get that on camera. But I'm afraid no, I was too late. So somewhere while we were watching that battle, Hürth getting past Malice into P2. Just looking at the lap time, yeah, it seems like Malice made some sort of error last lap. 2 seconds slower than his usual lap times. Apologies for the spam bots. McCoy now, after getting past Jack Young in that battle, that had to be very frustrating for him. Now also taking a look at Mikowski to make that P6. We also see Jack Young going a bit too far out and coming onto the grass there. Thank you to whoever took care of those spots. So in front, Alessio Mellis has lost P2 after some sort of mistake that I sadly couldn't catch on the replay, but is still keeping up with Hurt in front. Still 1 second behind, that was 4/10 just a moment ago. Losing some time now. And doing so in the worst part of the track because, just losing the slipstream on Hurt in front. She usually is considered to start at around a gap of 7/10, and Mel is now exactly 1 second behind. Morgan McCole has a lot of slipstream on Mikowski in front, but Mikowski, again, we've seen him do that maneuver, I think, 4 or 5 times. Towards the end of the start-finish straight, just goes towards the middle of the track a bit to stop the other drivers from taking the inside line in turn 1 and turn 2. So very, very good defensive line from him. And this has enabled him to stay in P6 for so long, despite that enormous pressure from Jack Young and now Morgan McCall behind him. Bit further behind, Robin Moe trying to take P11 from Florian Dürkop. Very close together, those two. And we have the first planned pit stop. Christoph Makowski coming into the pit. Don't think there was any sort of damage, so that's the first planned pit stop. We already just saw the chat starting to speculate about the pit strategy, with the undercut being very strong on this track, especially in the wet. So let's take a look if Makowski is trying one, or it's Kieran Patterson coming into the pit. So apparently both drivers assuming that the track won't be drying out enough for any necessary tire change. But of course with the dark coming, the track cooling down and the rain becoming less, tire pressures might become somewhat iffy. Makowski now coming back out again. Has quite some clear space in front of him. So now has the opportunity to use the free track without pressure from behind he has had to cope with for the last 30 minutes. Try to set good lap times. Jack Young, the man who was putting that pressure on, still applying the same pressure to McCall in front, who did manage to overtake him earlier due to a small collision between the two, but isn't really managing to pull away. So this event still the closest battle on track as it has been for the past 15 minutes. As we also just passed the 30-minute mark, 1/3 of the race over now. Good evening to Black Falcon Racing. At the front we still see Alessio Mellis somewhat keeping up with Niklas Hurt after getting overtaken after a small mistake. But gap is staying at around between 8/10, 1.2 seconds. Not really getting closer, but not really falling behind either. So that's about as much as he can do for now. Another guy who is keeping the gap in front around the same is Niklas Hurt. So we haven't really been talking about Jordan Watson all that much because he has been having a commanding lead for the last 30 minutes. Pretty much pulled a 6-second lead and just took it, ran away with it. But Niklas Hurt faster last time around and also managing to keep that gap steady. So just ever so slightly, ever so slowly trying to maybe catch up to Watson somewhat. But at the moment it is looking like Watson still has that lead pretty secure. Also shouldn't forget Watson, I think the only driver who managed to get out of lap 1 without any incident. Not quite sure if Niklas Hurt or Alessio Mellis had any sort of context, any sort of just ever so small damage that has to be repaired. But with margins so small, lap times so similar, even just a 2-second repair can make a difference. Alessio Mellis still keeping up very well. I am thinking that Mellis is sort of managing this gap at the moment. Not really trying to overtake Hurt. But also, Jamie Nuttall behind is getting closer. So that gap now also down to around 1.5 seconds. Maybe our championship leader trying to get back into the fight for the podium positions. We will have to wait and see. The gap is coming down very, very slowly. Might still take a few laps until we see any action here. Speaking of action, not really that much going on track at the moment. So just before the pit stop phase, apart from the first few drivers who have already pitted, they are most drivers trying to get settled in their position. Speaking of the pit stops, Makowski was the first driver to pit. Currently, last lap was 1:43.8. It's not really the lap time you will want to set. Let's see what this lap is. That's a 1:43.5 again. Yeah, so compared to McCole and Jack Young, who has been fighting with, they are still setting 1:42s. So it might just be that Makowski, due to his very, very good defending, managed to stay in front of them and now falling back into his actual pace. Might just be that the pit stop didn't really work out and he isn't able to set the lap times he could set. And yeah, looking at his best lap time, that was 1:42.6, so around 1 second faster than he is lapping at the moment. So it doesn't really look like the early pit stop is the correct strategy. Jordan Watson, yeah, has been falling somewhat behind, or rather not behind, has been falling less further in front. Niklas Hult managed to shrink that gap to 4.5 seconds. But yeah, it seems to be somewhat more steady again. Just take a look at this lap time. Last time around, Watson was again faster than Hurt. Around 4/10 faster. And let's take a look if the same happened again. No, it didn't actually. And Niklas Hurt setting his personal best lap time. Around 1:10 faster than Watson. Jamie Nuttall now closer than he has been the last few laps, and not Jack Young towards turn 1. Almost trying a move on McCole, trying to get that place back that he lost due to an unfortunate small punt. Also have Robin Moe chasing after Fabian Dürkop, who is chasing after Koroshavin. It's a three-way fight for P9. But Moe now, yeah, falling back a bit. Not quite sure who that is behind him. I think that is Patterson, so that is a back marker. So not under pressure from behind, actually. But yeah, also somewhat lost out to Dürkop in front. Ole Pitschek, currently P16, starting to get closer to York in front. Matt York trying to defend P15. It's a battle between two Aston Martins. And Robin Moe now also coming into the pits. So another driver going for the early-ish pit stop, and so is Ole Pitschek, so pulling out of this battle a bit earlier. Makowski now slowly getting into the groove again, 1:42.8 last time around, so that's near his personal best lap time. And also now slowly starting to set faster lap times than McCole and Jack Young, the drivers who he is de facto fighting against. They have been on a 1:43.1 last time around. And of of course, Makowski, helped by the fact that these two still fighting each other. They have been doing that for the past 40 minutes. Let's look at the weather. Rain a bit less in 10 minutes, and then again a bit more in 30 minutes. So this will definitely be a fully wet race. Towards the front, Jordan Watson, after losing a bit of time to Niklas Hürth, that gap has been pretty much steady on for the past 2 laps at around 5 seconds. So Niklas Hürth had a bit of hope of maybe trying to catch P1, but he has to speed up again to try to make that work. At the 88 car, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. Very close now to Alan in front. That's the pink McLaren. Trying to, tries it around in the inside line, now onto the start-finish line. Slots back into the slipstream. But too far back to try anything at the end of the back straight. There was a small mistake somewhere for Niklas Hürth. He lost around 1 second on Alessio Mellis. So Mellis now very close to Niklas Hürth again. But Hürth seems to manage to still defend the position into turn 1. Simeon, I guess that's the reverse commentator's curse. Trust me, it's better than the alternative. Normally, whenever I mention any driver, they immediately crash out. So Mellis now 3/10 behind. It's the fight for P2 that has been cooling down a bit, but yeah, Hürth with a mistake somewhere last lap, lost around 1.3 seconds, just looking at the lap times. But can Mellis stick with Hürth in front? He can't, because... Yeah, he goes into the pits. Excuse me for the confusion, it looked a bit like he was just going off track. But no, Alessio Mellis going into the pits, so ending that battle early on. And again, releasing Niklas Hürth. So that's P2 now in the pits. That's a bit further down the field. We see Giacomelli going into the pits. That's his second pit stop, I think, because he had some major damage early on in the race. After unlucky rejoin, let's call it that. A lot of drivers now pitting. Florian Dürkop also going into the pits, so is Kuderman. Also Jack Young now a bit further behind McCole, so that battle also cooling down slowly, which is good news for McCole, who now finally has some time to concentrate on his own race. Bad news for us, because it was quite a good battle. And also not really good news for Makowski, because he has been able to utilize that battle by setting faster lap times, but now that McCole has the free air, he is again setting similar lap times to Makowski. So McCole still has to pit, so has Jack Young, but in fact they're still in a battle with Makowski. Also Niklas Hirt now going into the pit. So our P2 and P3 now both pitting. Front runner John Watson still continuing, still setting the fastest lap time on track. Behind him Jamie Nuttall now promoted into P2, still running very close to his personal best lap times. I think those fluctuations in the lap times might just be the ACC in-game times. They are sometimes a bit wonky. At least looking at race control, it seems a bit more stable than in-game. So we have passed the halfway point of the race without me actually noticing. 42 minutes still to go. Jamie Nuttall still has to pit, so has Jordan Watson front, but Nuttall is losing some time on Watson, I think. What is possible, Watson did a mistake somewhere because, this time around his lap time actually went down by 1 second on my end too. Doesn't really reflect in the lap time. Yeah, you're right. Some very strange changes in the gaps between Watson and the rest of the field. Jack Young now also going into the pit, so giving up on chasing down Matt Cole on track, who is, however, still continuing. And we have some contact towards the back. That was Dewcop and Cunaman. Let's take a look. Yeah, that was the number 12 Honda. Just a bit too late on the brakes and taking out Florian Dewcop into turn 1. Also see Matt York now going into the pits, so we are at the point of the race where I'm starting to get a bit confused on who is actually in what position, because half the grid has pitted, the other half hasn't. I'm trying to keep up to enable you to keep up. One of the earliest pitters was Makowski, who is still setting personal best lap times, so now slowly starting to utilize his early pit stop, but yeah, with Jack Young already coming out onto the onto the track, and actually 10 seconds in front of Makowski. So that's, yeah, massive gap. So remember, before Makowski was pitting, he was in front of both Jack Young and McCole, and now 10 seconds behind. So the early pit stop didn't work out at all. There was some disagreement in chat how valuable the undercut actually is. There you go. And Niklas Hirt also coming back on track and behind Jack Young. So now I'm really confused. So that was a pretty long pit stop for Niklas Hirt. Alessio Mellis, yeah, also of course back out on track. is now 20 seconds in front of Niklas Hürth. So I don't know if Hürth had to do some lengthy repairs or what actually happened here. But yeah, lost a lot of time. And didn't just lose P2, but lost P3 as well. We also missed Jordan Watson coming into the pit, our race leader. Yeah, also pitted. Still in front, wasn't really in doubt, and managed to extend that gap to P2 to 13 seconds. Ah, okay, so yeah, Chad just informing me Niklas Hürth actually did take new tires, so that explains why he lost so much time compared to the other drivers. So we, yeah, we might see some faster lap times from Hürth now in the second half of the race, in an effort to catch down the rest of the grid who didn't take new tires. And he is already starting to do so by trying to chase down Jack Young. Now very close coming into turn 1, but not quite close enough. We will have to wait and see if Jack Young, after being stuck behind Makowski for so many laps on end, especially into turn 1, has learned a few lessons on how to defend into that corner. So far it looks like he did. Jack Young currently setting 1:42.9 lap times, which isn't fast enough to catch down Morgan McCole, who's still setting 1:42.5 lap times. Still has to pit, but Mike just extend his lead to Jack Young. Now has a few back markers to deal with though. So getting past Joshua Allen, there's contact! McCole just getting impatient, trying to lap Allen, and I think, yeah, just took him out. That's, yeah, interesting. Niklas Hürth still stuck behind Jack Young, and that's not really what he wants to happen. On the fresh tires, trying to chase down the position he lost by actually changing tires. And he will be very desperate to clear Jack Young in front of him, especially because there's a lot of clear air waiting in front of Jack Young. So, again, see another bit of contact, this time between Peterson and Peachman. So, that was a bit earlier than we saw. Yeah, Witz Patterson just not really looking at Peachman on the inside. Phew. That's, I would describe that as clumsy at best. It looks like Peachman actually agrees because he has now left the server. Robin Moe, we saw him fighting earlier, now chasing after Allen, who we just saw getting punted off by McCole as the backmarker, and now finds himself and fight for position because of that. And a bit further behind them, Florian Dürkop in the Mercedes, trying to chase after Kuderman for P16. And Niklas Hurt just getting past Jack Young. Let's just take a look at the replay. That's looking like a clean move into turn 1. Already a bit ahead coming into the braking zone, and nothing really that Jack Young can do there. Especially as Hurt takes the inside line into turn 2. And there's an incident for McCole. McCole just stationary on the side of the track. That looked to me like technical problems. And I think that's in the pit lane. He might just have run out of fuel. So just, yeah, slowly pulling to the side of the road. I think McCole ran out of fuel. So Jack Young just losing a position onto Niklas Hurt he never really had. Now gaining a position on McCole, definitely. Because that's going to be a lengthy pit stop. He had to have the reset to pit. I'm not quite sure if it was a disconnect. It looked odd because he just pulled to the side of the road and then immediately resetted into the pit lane. I'm not quite sure if that's what happens if you run out of fuel, because as bad of a driver I am, that has actually never happened to me before. Maybe someone in chat knows what the issue was for McCole. Florian Dürkop focusing on the on-track action. Still chasing after Kuderman. Gap has shrunk by quite some margin. Meko's still in the pits, so definitely had to reset back to the pit lane, and that's costing a lot of time. Yeah, he actually ran out of fuel. That's a big shame. So yeah, try to stay out very long, gambit, and just running out of fuel in the pit entry, no less. And yeah, as Semyon mentioned, Nuttall also still out on track, so he will have to come in any minute now. And so, yeah, quite a few other drivers in front as well. Dominic Gölz, I'm not sure why I'm calling him Daniel the whole day. Dominic Gölz also still out on track. So is Lukas Rode, so is Vince van Merveld. So those four still with the mandatory pit stop. Nuttall still setting 1:42.6 lap times. Which is some of the faster times at the moment, but not faster than Niklas Hurt, the driver who is actually competing again, but faster than Alessio Mellis, who we saw Nuttall trying to chase down earlier. But yeah, Nuttall still going in the Honda. I will be interesting to see if he stays on the same set of tires. Track should stay very wet for the rest of the race. Rain getting a bit less than 30 minutes, but yeah, that's after the race finish. Might just be that it's starting to slow down somewhat towards the end of the race, but not enough to really have an impact, I would think. But even if Nuttall doesn't change tires, he will be able to have a very light fuel load in his last stint. We have another car off, that's Giacomelli. Looks like just a small spin. Yeah, just a bit too greedy on the curbs. This time manages to rejoin without any incidents and didn't even lose the position. Jordan Watson, the driver who was leading the race before the pit stops and should still be actually leading this race. He at the moment has a 14-second gap to Alessio Mellis behind and is slowly increasing that gap too. Florian Dürkop still chasing after Kuderman in front. And Matt York now also getting closer to Mo in front. I apologize for any long silences. The ACC commentators channel on the AOR Discord seems to be contagious, because I'm also slowly starting to lose my voice. In much the same way that we just saw Robin Moe losing P13 by going off track. And also losing a place to one of the back markers. No, actually one of the front runners. That was Lukas Rode, who we also had to give the place back to. Now P14 promoting Matt York into P13. Florian Dürkop trying to take a look into turn 1, but not really getting anywhere with that. As we see our race lead at the moment, Jeremy Nuttall still continuing. So this, at the moment, also the only real battle that is happening on track. Of course, we still have to wait and see how the strategy plays out, especially for Jeremy Nuttall and Dominic Goetz. Dürkop now falling back a bit on Kuderman. Jeremy Nuttall still continuing, and so do all the drivers behind him. But still, yeah, quite good lap times. Speaking of which, Niklas Hurt now with 142.1. So that's 0.4 faster than anybody else on track. So changing tires starting to work out for him, I think. Yeah, lapping pretty fast now, making up quite some time on Mellis already. This lap time is invalid, so you might have made some mistake, some small mistake. But yeah, his strategy might actually pay off. Still 23 minutes to go, so that's still around 15 laps, I think. Yeah, last lap time also 142.3, despite being invalid, which is, yeah, still faster than anybody else. Jamie Nuttall, yeah, still not coming into the pits, still continuing. 20 minutes to go, this is starting to get ridiculous. But at least Lukas Rode has pulled the plug and he has now come into the pits. Not quite sure where he is going to come out, but a bit further back. Wasn't one of the front runners. Florian Dürkop also falling back a bit. Not really in the fight anymore for P15. So at the moment all we really have is the fight in strategies. While we slowly also wait for Niklas Hurt to make his way closer to Alessio Mellis in front. Lukas Rode now coming out of the pits, just trying to look where he will end up, probably behind Niklas Hurt. No, actually in front of Niklas Hurt. Yeah, for Lukas Rode, putting very late, has worked wonders, and finally, Simeon, you can actually take a breather. Jamie Nuttall now coming into the pits, contrary to Dominic Goetz, who is still not really feeling it. And neither is Vince van Merwelt. Nuttall now in the pits. And yeah, looking at where Lukas Rode came out, I think Nuttall might have a shot of actually coming out ahead of Alessio Mellis. So, we'll be watching this pit stop closely. Now moving again. Take a look at the 147 on the minimap. That's Jordan Watson. Who will, yeah, be in front of Nuttall. But Nuttall coming out very close to Watson and very far ahead of Alessio Mellis. So Jamie Nuttall up to what will be P2 and just 0.4 behind the race leader. So suddenly we have a fight on. So Jordan Watson and also Vince van Merwelt, the two sister cars. Van Merwelt letting both of them pass, even though he was actually ahead of them on track, but yeah, letting both of them pass very easily. Well done. That was a fair maneuver. I don't think Nuttall took tires now. Was a very quick pit stop. And yeah, Dominic Goltz, also still quite an unknown here. He still has to pit too. Half a second now between Nuttall and Watson. Pretty much have the entire track to themselves. 20 minutes still to go. I noticed that Wins is a teammate. I just mentioning he also let Jamie Nuttall pass very easily. So I think that's pretty fair play. Even though he could have just held him up to help out his teammate. It's always nice to see. And Dominic Goltz still carrying on. P1 still at the moment. Going for at least one more lap. And yeah, also Van Merveld also still having to pit. Florian Dürkop also very close again to cue the man in front. That battle has been going on for ages. But again, no real chance into turn 1. Jamie Nuttall, the Honda coming very close. So yeah, very brilliant strategy. Oh, and there's a slam into the wall from Watson. And that enables Nuttall to come very close into turn 1. But he was too far back to try anything. So Watson that didn't take away any damage from that. Small punt. Yeah, Nuttall falling back a bit in sector 1. Gap down to 1 second, so lost around half a second. Dominic Goltz still carrying on. Yep. Let's take a look if Nuttall can muster a challenge for P1 or maybe P2, depending on how quick the pit stop for Goltz will be. But it's looking like Nuttall can't really catch up to Watson, or at least can't catch up enough. 15 minutes still to go, so still a long way to try and make any moves. But the gap isn't really coming down. Still a very good move to actually make it into this position after the early stages of the race and get so far ahead of Alessio Mellis. Around 10 seconds the gap, 12 seconds actually. Thanks for pointing that out, Ashley. Jack Young also catching up to Niklas Hurt, who didn't really have the best few laps. So earlier we saw him catching down Alessio Mellis when Lukas Rode pitted between them. Now Niklas Hurt can't really catch up to Lukas Rode. That gap is actually increasing. And the gap to Jack Young is coming down. Dominic Gold still going on for another lap. I hope he knows he actually has to pit. At the moment it's not looking like he does. And not really able to catch up. Yeah, also now, as I mentioned earlier, out of slipstream range on the straights, so that isn't really going to help him. Around 2/10 slower last time around. Ole Pichik, also very close to Kuderman in front. So that also means Florian Dürkop got past Kuderman. That was the fight we have been watching earlier, before Jamie Nuttall went into the pits and the action unfolded at the front. So just to get some conclusion here, Florian Dürkop now in front of Kuderman, who is now under pressure from Ole Pichik behind. That's for P16. Dominic Goetz again carrying on for another lap. I'm not actually sure what the pit stop delta is here. It might actually be the case that Goetz is within a shot of the race win. And what a story that would be. I don't think just half an hour ago anybody really thought he would be in the running for the race win. But yeah, depending on how quickly he can do his pit stop, he might be. Jamie Nuttall now very clearly falling behind Watson. Gap now 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds before the start of this lap. So Watson taking the lead from Nuttall again in a somewhat commanding fashion. And yeah, still the unknown, the number 22 car, has also been running very consistent lap times until pretty much last lap. But still carrying on. 10 minutes to go. And our race leader still has to come into the pits. And so does Vince van Merwelt. 2 cars still with their mandatory pit stop to serve. We have a small spin from Yugo Tiamon. Let's take a look. It was into turn 1. Yeah, tried to... Oh, that's very unlucky. Tried to let one of the front runner past. Went offline onto the wet part of the track and just spun it around while trying to get going again. And then goes onto the grass to let another front runner get past. He was, however, already in P20. Didn't really lose any positions. As finally Vince van Merwelt makes his way into the pits. And we are waiting for Dominic Goetz to make the last pit stop of the race. Ole Pichik still chasing after Kuderman. And finally, Dominic Goetz makes his way into the pit lane. So, we now have to wait a bit. 9 minutes of the race still to go, and finally pit stop phase is over. And let's take a look where girls will come out. John Watson still on the other half of the track, making his way towards the banking as girls already gets going again. So I am pretty sure that girls will come out in front. Still has to make his way down the comically large pit lane. Watson now coming onto the start-finish straight, and no, he will get past. I don't think, yeah. No chance for Dominic Girls. Has to slot in behind Watson, probably behind Nuttall as well. But at least we finally have our answer to the question. No, actually, slots in front of Nuttall. This pit lane is really confusing. Yeah, Dominic Girls managed to get into P2 by staying out for this long, and finds himself in the middle of the fight for the lead. 1 second behind. Let's see if he can keep up to John Watson. So, after the longest period of the race, where we thought Watson was going to run away with it, we suddenly have 3 cars in the top 3 inside 2 seconds of each other. But Girls, I think, struggles a bit with the cold tires after the pit stop. Losing some time to Watson already, and also to Jamie Nuttall behind. Nuttall now pretty close to Girls. On to the start finish. I think just a bit too far back. Yeah, that's not gonna be any move into turn 1. Watson, however, pulling away. Six minutes still to go. That should be around 5 laps. And Jamie Nuttall still looking at making that a P2. So Jordan Watson, of course, still has to survive for a few laps to convert this into a victory. Would be Watson's first win of the season. Managed to get a P2 in Spa in the first race. Didn't manage to finish in Watkins Glen. Oh, so Dominic Girls would be on the podium for the first time this season. P11 in Spa, P5 in Paul Ricard, and did not start a race in Watkins Glen. Of course, Jamie Nuttall would be increasing his championship lead. Closest competitor in the championship at the moment is Makowski, who is running in P8 at the moment. So that's quite a large increase for Jamie Nuttall. But it could be still larger of an increase by making it P2 instead of P3. So they have some action a bit further down the field. Joshua Allen chasing after Van Merveld, and in turn being chased by Matt York. That's for P11 and P12. So Joshua Allen having a look at the inside, but Van Merveld covering off beautifully. And tries it down around the outside from turn 2. But in turn gets... Ooh, and there's contact between Allen and York. I think York just went into the back of Allen there. Now tries it around the outside of the 100-degree corner, which I'm sure has a name that's more practical than 180-degree corner. But whatever the name of the corner is, Matt York gets in front by going around the outside, but maybe Allen can fight back. Doesn't really have the brakes to do so. And Robin Moe behind says, "Thank you very much. I will take that inside line you just left wide open." But I think gets pushed onto the grass a bit there by Allen. And in turn loses quite some time on Florian Dukop, who is, yeah, taking the opportunity, but not quite converting the opportunity. Suddenly, towards the back end of the grid, things start to kick off with 2 minutes to go. Take a look if Dukop can use the slipstream here. Moe covers off, already swerves around the track, but now has to look out. Can't do too many movements. Side by side into turn 1, but Moe with the inside line. Made all the moves that mattered, but there's again contact between them. Dukop angrily flashing his lights. There's also an incident behind them between Kuhleman and Pitchik. Still side by side.
Alright, man, the leader is on the final lap.
Leader on the final lap, and there's Moe going very wide, losing it on the grass, and this battle over. At the front now for the last lap, at least according to the pit lane guy. Jamie Nuttall too far back into turn 1. See if he can make it P2. Or if he has to slot back for now, rather take the podium finish. Behind them, Lucas Rode also caught up to Alessio Mellis quite quickly. So, onto the back straight, Jamie Nuttall a bit too far back. That's not going to be enough to try anything. Van Merveld also now with an incident. Just, yeah, getting punted off by the 64 car into turn 1. That's Matt York, who, however, gave back the position.
On the final lap now. Give it all you can.
Jamie Nuttall now pretty much the last opportunity here on the inside, but doesn't really try anything. No, that's not going to work, and I don't think he's going to get past. Too far back to have it be a drag race, as the finish line is pretty early on, and Jordan Watson takes the finish line, makes it a victory that looked very secure for most of the race, and then suddenly wasn't anymore at the very end. Dominic Goetz, who I have been calling Daniel for last time, Dominic Goetz makes it P2, surprise finish after pitting very late in the race. Jamie Nuttall takes P3. Alessio Mellis manages to hang on to P4 after getting under pressure from Lucas Rode towards the very back. Niklas Hürth, very strong performance for long parts of the race, but taking new tires didn't quite work out. Jack Young manages to make it P7 after having to fight with this guy, Christoph Makowski, for most of the race early on. Makowski in P8, Koroshavin P9, now making his way towards the finish line. Unless Ostruc can do anything about it. And he can't. So that's Koroshavin P9, Ostruc P10. And the last few guys making their way towards the finish line. Joshua Allen P11. And that's the end of round 4 of the Apex Online Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione Season 11 Tier 2. That's one hell of a name. So we are just gonna wait and see if we can get Watson to join us for a quick interview. If any of you are already leaving, not wanting to wait around for this, let me just quickly say thanks everyone for watching. We will see each other next Saturday, so that's in 4 days, for the second race of the AOR Endurance season. So that's, don't let me lie, starting at I think 12 PM Central European time for the Super Pro session, and at 3 PM Central European time for the race, for the 9 hours of Suzuka. And of course we will see each other next week at the same time, at the same spot, for the 5th race of the season at Zolder in Belgium. And hopefully back again with Tim and John. Doesn't look like John will be joining us for an interview. Shame, would have really loved to have a chat with him. But I don't think, yeah, it's going to happen again today. So, then I will just close out by again saying thank you for watching. See you on Saturday or see you next week. Don't forget to follow Apex Online Racing on social media to not miss any future races, any future seasons, in case you also want to take part yourself. And have a good evening.
By 2 formation, let's change now. We go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action. It's go.
This is very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
From downhill, that head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course.